Are we recording? Yep. Okay. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Finance Committee today, November 26, 2024 at 4:33 p.m. Start with roll call. Alder Galvin.
Here.
Alder Hinkfist.
Here.
And myself, and Alder Johnson's excused. Entertain motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. D, approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. On to regular business. Number 1, consideration with possible action to refund 2016-2022 property taxes from a tax assessment appeal to Georgia Pacific for properties at 1919 South Broadway and 500 Day Street for the total amount of $897,273.09.
I would ask Director Ellenbecker, do we have to go in closed session if you just explain things to us like you did to me just before the meeting?
I think the attorney is going to start. Give
an
us overview.
Yep, I can give a little bit of an overview as far as the matter and how we got here. Pull up my notes. All right, so the matter dealt with the tax appeal that was filed by Georgia Pacific against the Department of Revenue. Because it's manufacturing, Department of Revenue does the assessments, not the city locally. The city and the Green Bay Area Public School District, as the affected taxing districts, intervened in the matter to preserve our interests as we are directly affected by the outcome of such actions. Ultimately, the matter was settled by the Department of Revenue and Georgia Pacific. Accordingly, based on the reductions in the assessed value for Georgia Pacific for both Day Street and Broadway, the taxing districts now have to refund Georgia Pacific for a claim of overpayment of property tax. And so we do have our outside counsel, attorney Amy Seibel here. She was the outside counsel we hired to represent the city and the school district. We cost shared in that action, and she could provide additional details with respect to the litigation and the settlement, and that we can all disclose with the committee in closed session. Okay. Any other questions in open session?
I know you kind of looked toward me. What I would like to say is that the $897,000 is the total amount of refund that would have to go back to the Georgia Pacific. That is what the settlement says. That is not all city portion. We have to submit that to the state. They will determine whether or not the other taxing jurisdictions should have to pay their portion back that they received over those years from 2016 to 22. The estimate is that the city's portion is about $342,000, and then Green Bay Schools, Brown County, and NWTC would have to pay a portion of that money back. But the full refund would be $897,000, and then we would get a portion back.
What would we be talking about in closed session? If you can just give me an overview of why we need to go into closed session, because we had an issue, we put in a claim, we lost, we owe this money. I don't know what we'd have to go into.
Right, future litigation and kind of the details as far as how the matter transpired and ultimately why we ended up where we ended up. It wasn't so much that we filed a claim, we fought to have a seat at the table.
Right.
And so kind of explaining the complexities and the intricacies of how that works, could impact, doing that in open session could impact our future litigation position.
We don't have any pending future litigation, do we?
2023 is still open.
Yes.
Okay, so this is still kind of ongoing with them in essence. All right, then I get it. All right.
Move to go to closed session.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And all the Hinkfist, you want to read the verbiage?
The committee may convene in closed session pursuant to Section 19.85 IG Wisconsin Stats for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel for a governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is likely or which it is or is likely to become involved. The committee will thereafter reconvene in open session pursuant to Section 19.852 Wisconsin Stats to take action on items discussed in closed session if appropriate and to consider the remainder of the agenda.
That's all we're doing.
Sorry.
To the remand.
All right, entertain motion to go back into open session.
Motion to go back in open session.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. And entertain a motion.
For staff to proceed as directed.
Okay. Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Alderman Grant?
Yes.
There was a section under approval of the minutes, there was a second approval of minutes that
Oh.
we missed over. If you wouldn't mind taking that item up so we can have an action on it. It was approval of the joint finance and personnel
Yep.
committee meeting.
Okay, sorry. We'll go back to, number D2, approval of the joint finance and personnel committee minutes from November 6, 2024 meeting.
Move to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Motion carries. All right, we are on back to regular business. Number 2, consideration with possible action on the financial management plan presented by Ellers Public Financial Advisors. Any
All
questions?
right, I will start. Yes, we've done this before, and it's nice to have our Ellers, our financial advisors, give us an overview of really where our financials are. And especially as we're coming into, we just finished a budget year, going into a new bonding year or borrowing year. And so we have Harry Allen on the line, and I guess I'll turn it over to you, Harry.
Awesome, thanks Diana. So I will share my screen here. I believe this presentation is also included in your packet. I'll go through it somewhat quickly here, but if there are questions, I'm happy to take those at the end. So just as a reminder for those of you who may not have been involved in the process last year, the city does go through annually and update the financial management plan. So what is a financial management plan? This is looking backwards at 5 years of history of the financials of the city and then projecting forwards the next 5 years to see where some pressure points might be within those future budgets. So really this is looking at finding a way to pair the large capital projects that are known with the tax impact that is acceptable to the city and just getting a feel for where these numbers are going to shake out in the next couple of years. So what are the current challenges for the city? The queue for capital improvements exceeds the ability to fund said capital improvements. It's a story all across the state, especially the past couple of years as we've seen construction project costs tick up as much as they have. General fund revenues are mostly stagnant due to state legislation around levy limits. Just a really quick recap here. Every time that the city issues debt, we do go through a rating update with Moody's. So I just provided a summary of where that rating shook out this year. Really no changes. The city stuck at AA3. The areas that the city has most control over are these financial performance metrics, and that's actually where the city scores the highest. So all the financial performance metrics are AAA level for the city. The things that are bringing that rating down to the AA category are the institutional framework, which you have no control over. That's just a set rating for all municipalities within the state. And then the economy metrics at the top, which the city has very little to no direct influence over. Within our model, we do a projection forward of where the assessed value of the city is going for, and that's how we project out where the tax rate might shake out. So included within this model, we have some slight growth in non-reval years, just based on any type of new construction happening throughout the city. We also account for some tax increment district closures, so 4 and 12 closing for the 2027 budget, and then 5 closing for the 2029 budget. Otherwise, you see jumps every couple of years when the city does go through a revaluation, bringing that assessed value back up to market value. So I've taken a backwards look here where the general fund balance has been over the past 5 years. You see a big jump from 2019 to 2020. That is a change in the how fund balance was classified within the audit. So not really that big of a jump from 19 to 20. But let's focus 20 to 23. The city has seen a really strong fund balance over that time period, exceeding the GFOA target of 2 months of general fund revenues. So looking very, very healthy and maintaining that fund balance for a fair amount of time. So looking at our forecasting for the next 5 years, we do provide a more conservative look when we are projecting forward. So most of those non-levy revenue sources are held flat at current levels, and then we really solve those future budgets for really the levy being the plug to balance your revenues and expenses. So I would consider our analysis more of the worst look at the worst case scenario at what the levy could be, because there likely will be some growth in those other revenues over the next 5 years. We do also account for growth from personal property aids. Act 12 did tie the personal property aid payment to growth in state sales tax revenue, so we do account for that. Otherwise, it's really just the levy growing year over year. General fund expenses were broken down in 2 different buckets of expenses and then inflated based on those various buckets through discussions with staff and kind of overall trends in those different expenses. The 2025 numbers included in our analysis do tie to the budget. So what are those inflationary percentages for all the expenses? Those are broken down here. Not going to go through them in great detail, but the one that's putting the most pressure on future expenses is this wages bucket at the bottom, and we've assumed those will grow at around 4% over the 5-year window. Lots of tiny numbers here. This is looking at the general fund going forward through 2029. So you can see in the 25 budget, around 107 million of revenues and 107 million of expenses. We've assumed balanced budgets for all of this. We do show the general fund growing fairly substantially through 2029, so up to around 121 million, with most of that growth hitting the levy. What's shown right now is more so the operating costs. We'll get into the capital costs and debt here in just a moment. So looking at the debt side of things, I know the numbers are really, really tiny here, but at a high level, this is showing where the city is right now when it comes to your general obligation debt. So on the far left is your total GO debt that you pay in any given year. And then moving to the right across this page are the various non-levy sources that are used to abate some of that levy need to pay that debt service. So you're taking out all this debt on a general obligation basis, but you're paying some of it from your utilities. Some of it is assigned to your tax increment districts. Some is assigned to parking and special revenues. You also have interest earnings and surpluses that are used on an annual basis to buy down the levy need as it pertains to debt service. So let's just keep the focus here in the 2025 budget. There's around 25 million of GO debt service to be paid in 2025, but only 10.8 million of that is actually being supported directly by the levy. When we look at 26 and 27, we do see an increase in 2026, about a $2 million increase in your existing debt service in the levy. So keep that in mind, depending on how surpluses or interest earnings shake out in 2025. You're likely looking at some type of increase in 2026 just from the debt that already exists for the city. And then after 26, you see that start to come down, which means there's room to take on additional debt with less of a tax impact. So looking at the debt finance projects that we have over the next 5-year window, we have assumed around 17.4 million of general borrowing in each of the years. So these would be for equipment purchases, for street improvement programs, any of those typical borrowings that the city does on an annual basis. Those are all reflected really from above Fire Station 3. Those are your around 17 million per year borrowings. And then you had Fire Station 3 and down, and these are more of your special one-off type borrowings. So the fire station is making up around 13 million in borrowing in 26 and 27. Police headquarters remodel, that's a substantial project, right around 24 million. We're expecting that to be broken out over about a 3-year period through 25 to 27. And then at the bottom of this page are some TID borrowings. So these will impact your GO debt limit, but they won't impact the levy. In total, over the 5-year window, around 150 million of planned general obligation borrowing. So what does that mean on a tax impact basis? Keeping the focus on that next 5-year window, we are showing an increase in 2026. So keep in mind your levy was already increasing about 2 million because of existing debt for 2026. Now we're showing it increasing right around 3.4 million. So this new debt will have a tax impact for the 2026 budget. So that's driving up the tax rate to about $1.76, where it's about $1.34 for 2025. By the time you get to 2028, we're projecting around a $17 million levy for debt service, at which point it should hold right around that level, give or take a few $100,000. Then looking at your GO debt capacity, the city is limited in how much general obligation debt it can take out by state statute. So that limit is 5% of the total value of the city as a maximum amount of GO principal that can be outstanding at any given time. We're projecting that even with these larger borrowings being planned over this window, that you're going to tick up to around 41% of that limit and come down from there. So right now, you're ending 2024 at around 37% of the limit. So in my opinion, that's not really a change. You're hanging right around that 40% of your utilization. So no substantial change on this front. Now, this schedule is showing you the levy projection. This is taking into account your operating costs as well as the debt service that you're taking on for these capital projects, and giving you an all-in look at where the levy is going the next 5 years. Looking at 2025, that levy is going to be right around 65.3 million. And then these future years, you see it start to tick up. And that's a combination of the operating costs going up around 3.5 million per year, and then your debt service costs increasing up to that total debt service levy around 17 million. So by 2029, we're showing a total city levy just shy of 84 million. So about a $19 million increase in the levy over the 5-year window. If you look at the bottom of this page, this is showing what the tax impact is on a $150,000 home. So for the 2025 budget, about $1,200 of their tax bill goes towards the city portion. And then by 2029, we're estimating that will have ticked up to about $1,500, so about a $300 impact over the 5-year window. You'll note that the change in the levy each year is a slightly different percentage than the change in the taxes paid by homeowners, and that's because we do account for some TID closures over this window. So you're going to see some jumps in value with those TIDs closing, which will drive the tax rate down and moderate some of this increase in taxes over the 5-year window. Looking at the levy projection on a slightly different fashion here, the green boxes are where we are showing the assessed value going. So we're accounting for revaluation happening for 2028. So you can see the tax rate starting to increase through 2027 as the value isn't growing substantially, but we are showing some modest gains in the levy, which would cause a tax rate increase. When you do have that reval anticipated for 1/1/28 values, you would see a decrease in the tax rate. This slide will get just a little bit confusing, so bear with me. This is looking at the levy limit of the city. So you are restricted to growing your levy on an annual basis by rate of net new construction or zero, whichever is greater. There is an exemption here, however, for debt service. You can claim a debt service adjustment to your levy limit on an annual basis up to the total amount of debt service that you're paying the following year. The city is in a good position with the 2025 budget where that adjustment that you claim for debt service is actually lower than the levy you're putting towards paying debt service, which is a very good position to be in. That means you have budgetary flexibility. Where we're showing in our model is that some of that budgetary flexibility may start to decrease over this window, where you might need to claim an adjustment E that is either equal to the debt service you're paying from your levy or exceeding the debt service being paid from your levy. That means you would be using an adjustment to your levy, a one-year adjustment to pay for operating costs of the city. So that would essentially create a budgetary deficit that would catch up to you at some point in time, but we're showing that you do have flexibility to manage that for the next several years if it's a situation you should find yourself in. So to explain this in a slightly more simple fashion, if you look at the chart at the bottom of this slide 16, the blue box on the left, that is your total debt service that's paid from the levy for that budget year. The purple is the adjustment that the city is taking to your levy limit worksheet. So if you see purple is lower than blue, that means you have budgetary flexibility in that year. If purple starts to increase and gets level with blue, that means you don't really have budgetary flexibility or maxing out that adjustment as it pertains to balancing your budget. And then if you start to see in 2026, where that purple bar now actually exceeds the blue bar, that means you're creating a slight budgetary deficit there that's going to catch up to you at some point because you're claiming a larger adjustment than you really need to pay your debt service. So you're using that adjustment for operating costs. We are estimating that 2026 will be right kind of at that break-even point where you might need to claim a slightly higher adjustment, and then 27, 28, and 29, that adjustment keeps ticking up. So basically what this is saying is net new construction isn't really anticipated to be at a point where you can grow your operating costs or your levy to match the growth in your operating costs. So at some point, there might need to be some other solution here. The good news is by 2029, we are showing that you would claim some of that abated debt, but your maximum adjustment you could be taken as this orange column. So purple can't be bigger than orange. And over the 5-year window, we're showing that purple does remain lower than orange. So you can still levy for what you need to over the 5-year window, but there will likely need to be a long-term solution if you do find yourself in this position. Looking at expenditure restraints, so this is another state aid program that the city can qualify for on an annual basis. It's important to make sure that you are qualifying the budget for this payment so you don't miss out on any money from the state. We are showing that if inflation hangs right around 3%, that this model does show you qualifying for expenditure restraint through the 5-year planning period. So in summary, wages and services are continuing to be the biggest driver of expenditure growth, and they will continue to be impacted by inflationary pressures. The capacity to fund capital improvement and facility needs exists, but that needs to be weighed against the tax impact of doing so. Levy limits do continue to be a concern. The city does have capacity here over the 5-year window, but if we start to see increases in the operating costs outside of that exceed net new construction, you might find yourself in a position where we do need a longer-term solution here, but you have flexibility over this 5-year window to raise the levy to what it needs to be. That was a ton of information, so if there are questions or if we want to have further discussion on anything, I'm happy to do that now.
Does this factor in the refunds that we get from the state? The money that comes from the state?
Surplus?
The surplus?
No, it's not surplus.
Or any,
Is that what you're talking about?
the state provides cities so much money.
Oh, state aids.
State
Correct.
aids.
And absolutely, what it does, it takes into consideration, it takes all of your expenses and then backs off any other revenue sources, any fees for services, any permits, any dollars from the state. And then your difference is how much you have to levy on taxes. So yes, any non-levy dollars, revenues would be included, and that would be considered a non-levy revenue.
Okay.
right, Harry, you did a good job. They have no
Yep.
questions for you. All
Unbelievable.
I mean,
Awesome.
right, any
Thank you.
action? I
Says
think that would
waive.
just be a receive and
Just
place
use
on
them,
file.
yeah.
So,
yes.
Second. Yes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, number 3, consideration with possible action on the 2025 borrowing request as part of the capital improvement plan. It's the best way to go through this.
Not sure, we just figured that this would be a good time, right after we just talked about our financial management plan, talks about the estimates that Harry was just showing is that we have built into this 5-year plan about $17.4 million of annual operating budget, borrowing. And so what's in front of you is something a little slightly higher than that. The first time we showed you the CIP, I think we were at about $29 million of borrowing. So since then, we have brought in front of you a smaller request. In most cases, it's in the, we have left the spreadsheet the same, and we show you which items that at this point the department has decided to either defer, postpone, make changes. All of the departments really in many cases have just deferred some of the requests, including you have some streets, some construction, you have some equipment. We also have some departments that are saying maybe we don't need the money now, but can we order our equipment? As you know, you got some of your larger fire and police vehicles, or even garbage trucks. You order them now, and we're getting them in 24 to 30 months. So we wouldn't have to pay for them, borrow that money now, but in some cases they may be asking for permission to order so that they can stay on their normal rotation of replacement.
Any questions?
yeah, for
Yes.
Director Grenier, on, where did we go? Under major projects, reconstruction. Several are listed as proposed non-carryover item. What does that mean?
A carryover item is an item that was proposed as part of the previous year's budget, and we currently have that money on hand, but we're building it in fiscal '25, so we have to show it as a '25 project. Non-carryover projects would be new projects that we would be proposing. So in essence, what we are proposing to do this year is take on no new reconstruction projects.
All right, because we already have the projects approved, we have the money,
Correct. We
Borrowed.
did that as part of the '24 budget.
okay, so it's just waiting to get done.
Correct.
Okay. So.
So like Oak and North Maple, Westway, Pleasant, it says 2025 reductions, is that meaning they're moving forward, or
No, it
we?
means those projects will be delayed a year. This
Delayed a
is
year.
something that we had talked about when we first started looking at 5-year borrowing. We were very concerned, the Department of Public Works was very concerned that the aggressive nature of the road reconstruction projects that the council demanded, that we would not be able to keep pace with that. And there was going to come a point in time where each year we would take 1 or 2 streets and push them off to the following year. You do that enough times, pretty soon you take an entire year and you push the whole project back. 25, we got to that point.
Okay.
So where it says 2020, okay, let's take the first one on the list. Reconstruct Oak Street, 315,000. Then it's 315,000 reduction, but it's also listed as a proposed non-carryover item.
Correct. That when we brought you the capital program, the first iteration a couple of months ago, we were proposing to do Oak in 2025. We are now proposing to do Oak in 2026. That would be the same for all of those projects that are in a similar situation.
Okay, and the money has not been borrowed yet.
We have not borrowed it yet, correct. So rather than borrow it, we're going to take all of those projects, push them off a year, and we'll come back and ask you for the money in '26.
Are we doing any reconstructs this year?
Yes, so
I'm sorry, Dusher.
St. Clair and Duikert are in there. And then we do have some, because we're not asking for bonding, they don't show up in this list, but we do have a couple of other carryover projects that we originally borrowed the money for '24 that we didn't get done.
For fire, I'm looking at $17,000 for a dishwasher, I think it is.
Yeah, these are large commercial dishwashers, and then also the plumbing and electrical associated with that project.
And how long do these things last for?
Long, I mean, we project like a 10 to 15-year.
Oh, okay. All right.
That makes sense.
Director Grenier, with the, I know we talked on this because of another project, but the Manitowoc Road sidewalk design, you have that in this. Do we not qualify for the TAP, or do we bond this, and if that comes,
Not for the design.
okay.
The
This
TAP
is just
pays
the
for the
design.
construction.
Okay. And do we have confirmation that we received that? Or
Yes.
we will? Perfect.
Okay, and then for the fire chief, the 3-year approval to order the rescue squad, what does that mean? 3 years to get it?
Correct.
So we have to order it 3 years out?
Yep.
And they're demanding money down?
Correct. There'll
Okay.
be no money down. We anticipate bringing that before council next year.
Oh, no money down?
No money down.
Okay, that's a change.
Yep, zero
Okay.
money down for all of our fire apparatus and ambulances, which is very nice.
Okay, and then the $100,000 for 1, 2, 3 staff vehicles.
Yep. So those are our fleet vehicles, for our command staff, and that includes all the upfitting and all the lights and everything for either an larger SUV or a modified pickup truck,
So those are 3 pickup trucks?
or SUV, Tahoes. We're still kind of trying to figure out exactly what.
Okay, and we're paying, because the PD's getting squads for 74.5,
Correct.
and they're transferring the equipment over. We're not able to transfer the equipment over?
We're trying our best to get, as much stuff as we can over. These are looking at a little bit different vehicle than what we've purchased before. So like radios and things will probably be transferred over. We're also recycling those vehicles, our current vehicles that these are replacing, recycling them over to other staff members.
So we're not
Or
having to
auction
trade.
them off.
All right.
Police headquarters, we pulled that one out.
We did not, when we brought to you the first time, I had an estimate at $7 million to be spent in 2025, realizing that there's really some design and some other, we wouldn't be spending all of that in 2025. All we did was move it out another year, so we only have about $1 million in there for 2025.
Okay. Okay.
Have we determined yet if that building can in fact be used as the police headquarters?
I would defer to someone else in the room.
That's the step that we're working on right now. We have a consultant that specializes in public safety facilities
Mhm.
doing some study work to tell us what our operation might look like in there. They did a bunch of interviews of people and did like a flow analysis in our existing facility. And now I anticipate getting that product back a little after the first of the year, and then that will inform the design process, assuming we don't run into some unexpected problem.
When we're looking at these designs for these buildings, how far into the future are we asking them to predict that these buildings will last?
That's one of the reasons why we retain the services of a company that does this for police and fire facilities.
Mhm.
And they look as far into the future as we can go. That facility is around 80,000 square feet, so it's not quite double what we're in now, so there's plenty of room to grow into that one.
Well, when you say there's plenty of room to grow into it, I keep thinking about evidence storage, which we literally have everywhere within the city limits. In fact, I'll rent you some space in my garage if you get tight. But is that being anticipated?
Yes, we're actually contemplating off-site evidence storage. That's a whole separate project that we're working on with DPW right now.
Okay.
And then Steve, the only other question I would ask is when we pull these off to redo these intersections, is that, it says reconstruct, so like what we were talking about in planning committee last night?
No, what we were talking about last night is a brand new street. These are existing streets that have to be reconstructed.
Oh, okay, okay, well, that's what I'm trying to
Right.
Yeah, reconstruct, they gotta pull all the guts out from underneath the street.
Oh, so,
All the utilities and everything have to be done in reconstruct.
like they're doing at Country Club.
Country Club next year is a
Yep.
reconstruct, yes.
Okay, and then for parks, a quick question. It says snowmaking grooming. I thought we had that purchased already.
Yeah, so we purchased the equipment, so we have the snow cannons and we have the groomer.
Okay.
What we need is money to do the infrastructure for that. So that would be running water lines, electric lines, building a storage facility for the equipment on site that's heated, so when we use the equipment in the winter, we can store it on site and we don't have to winterize that equipment every time we use it. So it's all site improvements, it's not the actual purchase of the equipment.
So we're not gonna be sledding this year?
No, we are. We purchased the cannons and the groomers. On a temporary basis, we're gonna store them at the park shop and haul them on site every time we wanna use it.
Okay.
That's not ideal, that's
Right.
not what we wanna do long-term, but we're planning on doing that this year to get by.
So you'd have to run water lines. I imagine you're hooking up to a hydrant out there somewhere.
We have a temporary above-ground water line already stubbed in, hooked up to a meter. We have to rent a large generator to use this.
Okay.
And that's a rental fee that we have to pay for every time we use the snow cannons.
All right.
But like I said, we can't, once we use them, we have to store them pretty quickly inside so they don't freeze
Freeze
up
up.
on us.
Okay.
So they can't just stay on the hill like they do at a lot of other ski hills?
No.
No? Okay. That's-
All right. I don't have any other questions.
No, I don't either.
All right.
The yellow highlight in here on our report means it's equipment or,
Yellow highlights just meant they were items that were added to the 2025 budget. When I brought the original 25 through 29 CIP to you, these are
Okay.
items that got added in the 2025 line, and you hadn't seen them before. They hadn't been in previous, so that yellow just carried over. They were new to 2025. I guess what I'd like to do is recap and show you when we get to the bottom. Unfortunately, there is a formula error in here, so our number is larger than what your paperwork shows.
no.
So our general lever borrowing request right now was in column L. So C is what was originally requested. These are the changes. We had 8.7 million, or actually, we have had over $8 million of reductions. Right now, the ask is still at about $19.8 million. As the presentation was just before this, that 5-year plan shows that we would borrow about 17.4. So you're looking at right now about, $2.4 million over that 17.3. Doesn't say you can't go over that amount, doesn't mean you can't move forward with this, but this would just say, that would change really the forecast going forward over time. It's, we're gonna have to pay anything you borrow. Of course, we have to pay that back. We typically borrow for equipment and some of these items 10 years, otherwise any infrastructure gets borrowed for 20 years. So over the next 10 to 20 years, you will be paying back more money if you go with something higher than what's in that presentation and what our financial advisor is just forecasting out in the 5-year plan.
So we're 2 million over.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, we were shooting for what, 17?
Yep, on the bottom, as I will show you, we had borrowed, the way we have it in there, per the forecast by our financial advisor, we were trying to shoot for about $17,350,000. The $1 million is a special item. That is, we're keeping that separate, so the annual borrowing 17.3. So right now, we are over $2.4 million on the annual borrowing, because we are currently at $19.8 million in the orange box. This is just another summary by different departments.
How does this affect our budget this year, or it'll be affecting our budget next year?
It will not affect 2025 budget. If we borrow earlier enough in the year, we will have to pay a portion of the interest of what we borrow at October. So it's a very, very small impact in the 2025 budget. Because this exempt borrowing, we pay our principal in the spring with some interest, and then you pay a second interest payment in October 1st. Borrow early enough, like I said, sometimes you have a little bit of interest. We already anticipate that. So It would not affect the 2025 operating budget levy request for that by much. It would probably, you'd see the increase in the 26 budget.
Which is when we expect the levy rate to go up, right? Levy dollars? If I'm getting the terms correct, I'm just making my notes.
Talk for the presentation,
Yeah, because didn't he say,
2026.
Correct. There are 2 TIDs that are going to be closing. We expect that TID 4 and TID 12 will be closing, but I think that's going to affect 2027, if I'm not mistaken. But each year, your levy is really, again, it's your expenses, less how many non-levy revenues, any other revenue source that we can come up with. You back that off. The difference is your levy. The levy is actually what gets put on a tax bill, right? So with the anticipation, your levy will go up as long as your expenses go up, unless you can find another funding source to help offset some of your expenses. Starting in 2027, we do have 2 tax increment districts that will be coming online, which will help reduce the mill rate for the tax bills.
So potentially this is good time.
This was an intentional timing for, at least for like the police headquarters and the fire station. That was the intent. We knew that we have 3 TIFs that are closing. TIFs just means it's the financing that goes along with the district. So we knew we had 3 TIFs that were going to be closing, and that additional would help offset some of the increase in our borrowing. So the borrowing, again, right now we know we're setting money aside for the fire station 3 replacement, and then also the admin building, and then we also working on the police headquarters. So this was planned to use that TID money to help pay for a larger debt service.
so are you asking us to come up with 2 million?
No, she's asking you to either approve this or for you to come up with 2.4 million.
That's where I was just going.
Yeah.
Again,
Let's start with the dishwasher.
again, this is, we can send it back to staff, we can have more questions. This is what staff was able to, like I said, we started off at $28.6 million. Staff was able to come back with about $9 million cuts. In most cases, there's just deferrals. Some projects maybe, got pushed up back a year. We did have some departments that were doing some consolidation of, buying equipment together, or moving the equipment around that's not being in one department, not being used as much, and kind of seeing that another department could pick it up, and then we were able to move some pickup trucks around on this list.
I saw that. I guess my comments on this, we ask our department heads who know what they need to run their departments properly. We heard last year from, I think it was Parks and DPW, from the employees themselves about how degraded their equipment is and how much effort has to go into keeping it running, as opposed to if we had spent money, bought newer vehicles. So you get into that balancing act, is the juice worth the squeeze, but unfortunately, we just don't have the money to get caught up the way we should be. And we trust that every department head is giving us, even in their green line, proposed what they really think they need to do the job and do it right and keep their people safe and the citizens safe in this city. And then we ask them to take cuts, and that's what we have for the reductions, and it's considerable. Does it get us to that 17.3 that we wanted? No, but I mean, looking through this, we could nitpick everything apart here and ask them to save a couple thousand here and a couple thousand there, and at the end of the day, are we really doing any good by buying something that's cheap as opposed to inexpensive? I trust what the department heads are telling us, and I wish we could do more for them. And at the same time, for the taxpayers, I'd like to see us stay within that 17 million, but you got to pay for what you want, and they want good service, and you don't get that by nitpicking and reducing stuff that you truly need. So I'm not going to ask for any reductions in the amount that we're asking for in loans.
Not sure if any other department has had anything they would want to say about the list. I mean, it's been kind of a moving list, but.
I just want to clarify really quick, Chief Knott, you kind of asked us about the vehicles. So we're getting different vehicles, the staff vehicles, they're different than the police department, or they're the same but it costs more because we're switching the equipment over? I guess we see a difference in price with your vehicles versus theirs. Is
Right.
there a reason we don't get the same vehicle?
Yeah, those are like, law enforcement's getting Ford Explorers. We're looking at maybe like full-size pickup trucks.
Is there a reason though?
Just because of the equipment we carry in those command vehicles. We have command boards and slide outs and things like that. So it's just, that's the number we came up with, looking at best use and best practices. So vehicle prices are going up exponentially, and we've just tried to budget for enough money to do what we need to do.
Okay, I just wasn't sure with everything, the equipment stuff that's on the engine itself, and I know they travel with each other, that if it's a need or something that can be evaluated and looking at different vehicles.
A lot of times the equipment can be adapted, but if you were to change the type, like when we went from Crown
Sure.
Vics to Dodges, we had to get new cages and
Mhm.
everything else because it just didn't fit. So that's an expense that can add up.
Mhm. Do you have any questions?
No, when I look at these things, it's really providing services. It's getting the roads done, it's improving our parks, it's making sure our employees have the tools that they need. I'm not gonna go through and find. This is what the team came up with, so.
All right, then I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Just I want to add, there are two items on here that we'd ask for approval to order. I guess I would ask if maybe as a recommendation that we would bring back a list of any large equipment that we want to purchase, we won't be paying for in 2025, but that have a long lead time that would be part of the normal replacement. Would that be okay, Chief? Would that be all right, or would you, because they really should take another action, whether or not tonight, whether or not that you
Correct.
want them to
Correct.
give you permission to order. And I know Director Grenier also has sanitation trucks. I don't know if you need to have any permission to order sanitation trucks ahead of time. So I wonder if we should, for one of the next meetings, we should put a list together of all the items that we won't be paying for in 25, but because of long lead times, get the permission. But then what that means is then the council is obligating then, let's say in 26, you have to pay for some sanitation trucks, 27, maybe for some larger pieces of equipment. But at least this would give them time to put that order in.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
All right, then we are on to number 4, consideration with possible action to approve the purchase of the Verdict electronic access control alarm system for the City of Green Bay City Hall for a total cost of $107,955.90 using 2024 borrowed funds.
This
Can you
is
kind of-
Chief Falls.
I think this is with IT, if Director Wilket's on.
Correct.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm here available to speak on this.
What is this exactly?
So, at the beginning of the year, this was a planned project to replace our existing access control alarm at City Hall and the PD. With the changes at the PD and likely them moving, they kind of dropped out, but we're going to continue to move forward with it. Our system currently is very unflexible, and with the changes to security that we've been looking at, we're just unable to really do that. Anytime we make changes, we have to get support here. It's a proprietary system. We have really no way to program it ourselves. Verkada is a system that we're already using at Wildlife Sanctuary for their access control and surveillance and alarms. Transit's putting it in currently for surveillance. So that would make us compatible with more facilities the city owns by moving to Verkada. And I think the police department, wherever they land, will eventually go this route as well. So this was planned, the PD has dropped out, and the city hall system we want to move forward.
So this is the alarm system currently in place that if something happens in certain areas, certain people can hit buttons and it goes out?
That's part of it. Yeah, part of it is the panic alarms, the door swipes, the fire alarm is tied into there. We have monitors in our server room. There's a lot of components that feed into this system. with Verkada, we get all that and a lot more. It's a cloud-based system, so it's easily, combined with the existing ones at Wildlife and Transit. So it's going to make for a more unified system security-wise, and it integrates well with cameras.
So it's the whole fob system too?
Yes.
All right. And, but we're not talking about cameras here, right?
Correct. The cameras we have at City Hall are on the PD system, the Milestone system that's already existing, so we're not replacing that.
All right. Are we gonna have to reissue all new fobs to everybody when we install this system?
Not sure yet. We are reutilizing as many of the swipes and hardware that we can. It's likely they may work. I think we will probably want to replace to get some additional features, but at this point, we may not have to, but eventually we will. That's probably not going to be a relatively big cost. The cards themselves would not be that expensive. It would just be a little bit of a time to reissue cards and fobs.
Will we be saving money because we don't have to call in the current company to redo things, as you're saying?
Correct. We have to call them in quite a few times, not only for fixes on an older system that's starting to have failures, but also just to reprogram. For instance, today, an instance was they removed some panic alarms on 3rd floor, and it caused the outdoor doors to lock, and there's no way to disable the system. We can disable the response of the police to a panic alarm, but we can't change the functionality, like when you push a button, the doors lock. So we had to manually unlock the door several times while they worked on those. With a newer system, we'll be able to just disable that function while we're working on stuff ourselves.
What is the current age of the current system?
I think we're approaching 8 to 10 years.
Is that average, or is that?
I think it probably is close. We could look at replacing some of the hardware, but to be honest, the software and the system itself is just very hard to work with, and we wouldn't be able to get around having to call support even moving forward for changes and things that we would like to do ourselves in the system.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
I have some questions. How does this work if we make any changes to City Hall? I know we're doing some construction and renovating. There's talks of, different facility. Is this technology able to be moved or adjusted accordingly without extra charges?
Probably not 100%. Depending on the moves, the physical moves would probably need some level of support. But software-wise, functionality-wise, we would have more control. As with the existing system, any moves would require changes. It's a standalone system that's wired to itself. It doesn't take advantage of our network necessarily for the swipes and the alarms. So that would all have to be rewired if it required that because of physical, changes to the building.
Okay, and are we, I guess I don't know who to ask this to, are we at a good stage or point in our, I know we're doing some remodeling and stuff like that. Are we confident in the stages we're at to install this and not waste money ultimately?
I think so. I think anything that will be done with the changes would be just additions. So we would add as needed. The existing system is going to pretty much mirror what we have to start with, and then as we change and need to add, I can't see us removing stuff. It's more like adding a new space or adding a new swipe here or there, which we would have to do with the existing system if we were going to, with the same changes planned.
Go ahead, Director.
I think what you might be asking is, about a year or two ago, there was a question whether or not we would be staying with City Hall, or whether we would be looking to maybe move to another building and then repurpose this building. I believe one of the last outcomes of one of the last ad hoc facilities meetings, it was determined that we would stay in this building and that they would improve this building.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if anyone heard anything different than that, so I think the intent is, and actually, Dan, our director, Ditchite, actually oversees this building, and I believe that at that point, they had put that one to rest and that they're going to be maintaining this building.
That's correct.
Okay, that's kind of, yeah, because we have had the conversation.
Correct, it did, but that's been about a year or two ago, and that
Okay.
was pretty, that decision out of the ad hoc facilities meeting that, to focus and improve this building.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So technically, there is a savings because we're not working with another company, correct? If we can, we have the programming control. So it's costing us 107, but then there's got to be a savings of us not having to contract with that company.
Yeah, I think definitely moving forward, we're seeing more and more need for service. So by replacing the failing components with new systems, all the back-end stuff would be replaced, is the swipes we would use, and that's relatively low cost. But yeah, I think we're trying to avoid, more cost as we move forward, just in replacement and maintenance. And this also comes with this price is a 5-year licensing, so we won't have any additional recurring costs for 5 years.
How long do you see this lasting for us? Is there any advantage to looking at a longer licensing agreement to lock it in? I mean, things are only going up in price.
Yeah, I think we can see this probably at least as our existing system, a 10 to 15 year lifespan. Verkada, it's a cloud-based system, so we have no servers to house. It's just the components that run the doors, things that are local. So I think moving forward, the cost will be relatively stable. Annual maintenance would only be around, if we had to pay it, currently would be like $9,000 a year to maintain licensing. So it's not a huge cost for licensing, and only additional cost would be for anything we decide to add moving forward.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we move to approve.
I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, number 5, consideration with possible action to approve the purchase of a Lion Hose training system for the fire department for a total cost of $53,324.37 to be paid to the Pipeline Emergency Response Grant dollars. Any questions? Straightforward.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 6, consideration with possible action to accept Wisconsin Emergency Management Hazmat Regional Emergency Equipment Grant for $29,963.05. Any questions for this one?
No. Motion approved.
Second.
All right. I just want to say thank you again for
Yes.
always doing a great job with the grants. It's great to see come forward.
Mhm.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 7, consideration with possible action to approve a budget amendment resolution to use $2,700,000 of the general fund balance towards the properties at 435 East Walnut Street, 503 East Walnut Street, 212 to 214 South Madison Street, and 512 Cherry Street that settled on September 18th, 2024.
I can add just a few comments to this. This is really just a follow-up. There was approval to move forward and purchase the building. Again, it actually closed on September 18th, and then it's really because of the use of the fund. Part of the payment, part of the purchase price, we used $2.7 million of fund balance, and to use fund balance, I need a resolution to use the fund balance. At the time of all the moving dollars, I didn't think to bring the resolution through at the same time. Again, for us to do a budget amendment and to use the fund balance, I need a resolution. It's just to finish up the recording of the purchase of that building.
Okay. So I'll move to approve the resolution.
Second.
Any other discussion or questions?
Yep.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Number 8, consideration with possible action on the resolution to fund real estate taxes for parcel number 6-2122, St. Vincent Hospital at 1841 Gary Lane for the 2023 assessment year for a total of $2,806.04. Any background?
This is again, this very similar situation as just smaller dollars, but it was a situation where at some point this taxpayer paid the bill, and for some reason, something has changed, and we have actually appraiser Alex in the room if you have questions. But at some point, we need to refund them the money. We will refund them the full amount, and then we will go through the state, have them make the determination if other taxing jurisdictions need to pay their share, and then they will, in the following year, they will pay their share back to the city.
Any questions or discussion? Okay, entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Number 9, consideration with possible action regarding a budget amendment resolution for unbudgeted overtime for special events.
Motion to approve. This is standard what we go
Yeah.
through, right?
Yep, and I think just the, as you will see, the one above for the police overtime was a very large number. It was 240,000 because, and what happened is that there was a payment for the RNC of an overtime of $181,000. The check was received and we received the check. And so we had $181,000 worth of overtime, and now we got that reimbursed. And so again, this is a budget amendment. We don't know, we didn't anticipate, or we didn't know the dollar amount, so we don't budget for it. But because the expenses are there now, we increased the expense budget and the revenue side. And so that doesn't look like the police department that is over on their overtime line, because we just basically give them a larger budget for these special events.
Okay,
Motion approved.
Second.
all right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Number 10, consideration with possible action on approval of claims committee reports.
I have no questions.
Me neither.
Okay, then I will entertain a motion.
Motion approved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Number 11, consideration with possible action on an update on the acquisition of the abandoned rail yard on Ashland Avenue for communication from Alder Brian Johnson, District 9. Do we? Okay.
Yes, no, I would recommend we go into closed session.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to move to closed session.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and I'll take this one.
Sure, give me the,
This is our last item for the finance group, so whether or not you're welcome to leave or
okay, the committee may
you're welcome to stay and
convene.
then come back in and then we end the meeting.
And there's personnel.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, the committee may convene in closed session pursuant
Yep, go ahead, Reed.
for
Yeah, you can say.
purposes of deliberating or negotiating the sale of public properties, investing in public funds, or conducting other specified public business as necessary for competitive or bargaining reasons. The committee will therefore reconvene in open session pursuant to 19.852 Wisconsin Stats to take action on items discussed in closed session if appropriate and to consider remainder of the agenda.
All right, one moment, please.
Dennis, what?
Motion
Return
vote.
back to-
Motion to go back in the open session?
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion for staff to proceed as directed and for a update in the first meeting in May of 2025.
Okay,
Second.
all right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Then it's just informational report of the routine personnel, or I'm sorry, where did,
You're still
I
on
gave
this
you
one.
mine.
Oh,
sorry. No, that's not the finance one. Sorry. I handed it to you to read.
here.
Okay, so, sorry, information number 1, 2024 contingency account, $238,788. The next finance committee meeting will be held on December 10th, 2024 at 4:30. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Meeting's adjourned. Sorry.
Go to the back.